Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the topics that we shall be discussing today. Before we start, two quick and important announcements. If you want to prepare with us for your civil services examination and you are considering joining our courses, then it is better if you join before 8th of June, because I'm told that this offer, where our comprehensive live classes program for CSE 2026 is available at 19,999. This offer is ending on the 8th of June. You go through our website, you may see a different price being quoted on the website. But if you apply this code IS English, it will automatically unlock the lowest amount, which is 19,999. That's number one. Number two, you may also be aware of our new program, Unacademy Platinum. And there are two free sessions planned for you today as well as tomorrow. Shyam sir and Chetan sir would be taking these two Unacademy Platinum sessions. In session number one, Shyam sir will focus on how to make crisp, effective notes for revision, and Chetan sir would explain how to read newspaper and make notes from the newspaper. So let's get started and let's look at column number one, the university versus constitutionally protected speech. Few things. Constitution talks about a fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a). That's what we call freedom of speech and expression. But it is not an absolute fundamental right, which means there are reasonable restrictions. And these reasonable restrictions are imposed on your free speech under Article 19, Clause 2. And there are 8 reasonable restrictions: sovereignty and integrity of India, security of the state, friendly relations with foreign states, public order, defamation, contempt of court, incitement to an offense, morality, and decency. These are 8 reasonable restrictions on the basis of which your freedom of speech and expression can be restricted. But what is this topic all about? Understand that I will give you 3 instances, 3 examples. The first example is that of Mr. Ranveer Alabadia, a podcaster who appeared as a guest on India Got Latent, a comedy show by a stand-up comedian, Samir Raina. And he made a joke which was horrible, distasteful. But then multiple FIRs were filed against Ranveer Alabadia in different jurisdictions in this country, in different states. Ranveer Alabadia approached the Supreme Court and with a simple prayer, with a simple plea that please club all these FIRs together, because I can't defend myself in various courts of this country. I can't travel from one court to another, one jurisdiction to another, one state to another. Please club all these FIRs together so that I can defend myself in one court of law. Supreme Court, instead of clubbing all these FIRs together, made some remarks against Ranveer Alabadia and said that you have a dirty pervert mind. Because of your joke, it will also dehumanize and it will also affect our sisters, our mothers, as well as younger brothers. So you have a perverted and dirty mind. But was it right on part of the Supreme Court while hearing this application to say this? This is something which is a matter of debate. You and me can say this, but courts have to be dispassionate when hearing an application, when hearing a plea, and you have to understand and give verdict ruling based on the merits of this case. Supreme Court said something else. Supreme Court said, we will not club all these FIRs together right now, but we will stop further registration of the FIRs. That means no other jurisdiction, no further FIRs can be registered against you. At the same time, you can't carry on with your podcasts. No more further podcasts, although that has been revoked now. But this is something I'm talking about when it was appearing before the court for the first time. And then the court also asked him, surrender your passport. Criticism against the Supreme Court was that this amounts to judicial censorship. It is not right, or it was not right on part of the Supreme Court to censor Ranveer Alabadia, no matter how distasteful his comment or his joke was, which in case was not even a joke. It was a horrible, distasteful statement. But should we set in criminal laws in motion against a distasteful comment? Did that violate obscenity, morality of the society? That's for the courts to decide, yes. But instead of deciding that, instead of clubbing all these FIRs together, what the court said, surrender your passport, no more podcasts, and you have a dirty and perverted mind, which basically means that the court is imposing censorship on this podcaster. Normally, the job of the court is to review. If censorship regime is set in motion by the executive, then the job of the judiciary is to check whether the censorship is valid or invalid, because there is no scope for censorship in a democratic society. But be that as it may, this is case number one. This is where Supreme Court was subjected to severe criticism. But then case number two of a Rajya Sabha politician, Imran Pratapgarhi. He had recited a poem, and that poem was related to, he said, if there is injustice in the society, we will meet injustice with love, tears, and sacrifice. Case was filed against this Rajya Sabha MP in a police station, and the allegation was that you are causing enmity amongst different sections of the society. You have hurt religious sentiments. Matter went to the Supreme Court because the Gujarat High Court had refused to quash this FIR, had refused to provide any relief to this Rajya Sabha MP. And then he approached the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said something significant. Supreme Court said no such case has been made out. This was an innocent poem. This poem did not call for violence. So how can you arrest this individual, or how can you file a case against this individual, because no criminal case can be made out from the poem which he has recited. And the court said something significant. Court said whenever such a case is filed against an individual, when it relates to free speech, for which the punishment is 7 years or less under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, you can't immediately register the FIR. When a complaint has been filed, police will not register the FIR immediately. What police will have to do? Police will have to conduct an inquiry. Police will have to read that speech. Police will have to watch that video and then apply the mind and then decide whether a case can be made out, whether religious sentiments have been hurt or not, whether you are causing enmity amongst different sections of the society. So, this is something which never happened in independent India, where under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, now the court is asking the police that before you register the FIR, you have to conduct a preliminary inquiry, at least when you are talking about an offense for which the punishment is 7 years or less under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. So, one extreme, court imposing censorship. On the other extreme, court upholding free speech in India. Same Supreme Court, two different viewpoints on two different cases, which are similarly located because they talk about free speech. Then came something else. A professor, an associate professor at Ashoka University, Professor Mahmoodabad, what he said, he was commenting on the Operation Sindoor. And in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor, we saw the foreign secretary flanked by two women officers, one from Indian Air Force, the other from Indian Army, belonging to two different religious communities, and as women. Professor Mahmoodabad said, this is the symbol of India's plurality and pluralism, where there is a woman from Sikh faith and a woman from Muslim faith and defending the country during Operation Sindoor. So he praised Operation Sindoor. But then he also said, if at the same time there is violence against Muslims in India, this projection of Colonel Sofia Qureshi would only mean optics. unless and until you change things on the ground where there is no marginalization of the minority community. Case was filed against this professor. He was arrested as well. Then he approached the Supreme Court and he asked for bail. This time, the court came down heavily on this professor. Although bail was granted, but the court said, your statements have dual meaning. On one hand, you are praising Operation Sindoor. On the other hand, your intention is something else, maybe to polarize the society. So you should be careful before speaking. This amounts to what previously used to be a position in Britain called imprimatur, where you have to first seek the permission before saying something. And this goes against the foundational principles, for example, of John Milton, wherein he said, give me the liberty to know, to utter, to argue freely according to my conscience, above all the liberties that you can give me. So forget about all the liberties. The most important liberty should be give me the liberty, the freedom to know, to utter something based on my conscience. And constitutional experts say, since when can there be restriction on free speech on the grounds of patriotism? So, can the speech necessarily have to be a patriotic speech? These are not my viewpoints, these are the viewpoints of the constitutional experts. Because this professor, he was granted bail, but at the same time, he was asked that don't speak on India Pakistan conflict. Just like Ranveer Allahabadiya was told that you should not podcast anything, which primarily amounts to censorship imposed by judiciary, which is something that constitution has not envisaged. The point here the author is making is that yes, freedom of speech and expression is not absolute. There are reasonable restrictions. But what medium was used by this professor? Internet. Supreme Court has said in 2020 in Honorada Basin versus Union of India 2020 that right to access internet is a fundamental right under freedom of speech and expression. Right to access internet, that means use internet to express yourself. It's part of 191A. Not just that, today we use internet for what? For online learning, for selling goods on Amazon, which means it is important for your Article 191G as well, which gives every single citizen the fundamental right to practice, profess any trade, any occupation, carry out any business. And it goes into the heart of Article 21, which talks about the dignity of an individual, the liberty of an individual. And in fact, Kerala High Court had also said in 2019 that right to access internet is a fundamental right under Article 21 capital A as well, because this is the medium through which you ensure education as well, online education as well. So this medium of internet was used by professor to say something which may not have been patriotic, for example, for the sake of the argument, but that should not set the criminal laws in place. And that too on the orders of the court, where the court is now saying that investigation, a special investigation team has been set up to investigate and read all these statements made by the professor to see whether an offense can be made out. Because in Anuradha Basin case, the Supreme Court said, yes, there can be restrictions, but these restrictions have to follow a doctrine called doctrine of proportionality. And what is this doctrine of proportionality? The simple example that I reiterate almost every time when I speak on this topic in the class, that if there is a mosquito and you have to kill it, what are the various ways which you can employ to kill this mosquito? You can use a mortine, you can use a mortine bat, you can spray hit, or you can use AK-47, or if you can use IED, improvised explosive device, or you can use an atom bomb as well. So there are various options of meeting this objective of killing the mosquito, but you have to find the least restrictive method. Because if you use atom bomb, it will not only kill mosquito, it will kill you as well and the society as well. So you have to follow the doctrine of proportionality. So free speech is important, but free speech is not absolute, but you have to follow a restriction called doctrine of proportionality. And when in a university, university is a garden of ideas. You may not agree with what a professor has said, but that amounts to dissent. That does not amount to activism. So, a university scholar or a professor or a teacher saying something, advocating something, that does not necessarily mean that he is becoming an activist. It means dissent. I disagree with this. That's what Voltaire would also say. I disagree with what you say, but I will defend till death your right to say it. And when this statement was issued, when this post was posted by this professor at Ashoka University, now the university has distanced themselves then from the professor, which Professor Faizan Mustafa says should not take place, should not have happened. Because on one hand, when scholars do something good, university is very quick to take the praise as well. But when the scholar does something which is dissent or which is disagreement, then university should not use its hands off approach, should not distance itself from the professor. Because then what will happen? You will not be in a position to attract good talent in a university. And it is because these universities are the garden of ideas. That is how we have been in a position to produce grades such as the Aryabhat, such as the Charaka, such as the Chanakya. So, in universities, we should encourage different viewpoints because unless and until you learn something in a university, we are not going to, we should not aim for producing robots in the university. We should aim to produce intellectuals from the university. Something similar. For example, the student politics in universities has been criminalized to a large extent. If future leaders will not come from universities, where are these future leaders going to come from? They will come from dynasties, universities. And you can link this topic with what is happening in United States, where Donald Trump is imposing bans on the Harvard University or the Columbia University, banning the entry of foreign students into these universities. Although half an hour earlier, the court in United States has doubted that, stopped the ban of foreign students and their entry into the Harvard University. But be that as it may, this column towards the end talks about that when it comes to private educational institutions, because Ashoka University is a private educational institution. So, how can fundamental rights be enforced against a private entity? Because Ashoka University then cannot be a state under Article 12. The Supreme Court in Janet Jayapal versus SRM University has said that even these private universities, because they perform public functions, they are state within the meaning of Article 12. So, whatever rules they make, these rules should not also be arbitrary because right against arbitrariness is a fundamental right under Article 14 of the Constitution. That is what you need to understand from this topic, the university versus constitutionally protected speech. And this is the conclusion, or this is a statement which you can write in your essay as well. A vibrant democracy like India must safeguard constitutionally protected speech, especially in academic spaces such as universities and colleges, where freedom to express diverse viewpoints, even dissenting viewpoints, it is essential for intellectual growth. And then, if you label opinions by scholars or professors as activism, then it restricts the very soul of these academic institutes. So, any opinion expressed by a university scholar or professor, don't confuse it with activism. It may also be a breeding ground for different viewpoints, which will enhance the intellectual capability of that university. And this is the question for your mains exam. Freedom of speech is not only a constitutional right, but also the bedrock of democratic and academic institutions. In the light of recent debates over restrictions on expression within universities, this is where we are specifically addressing universities. Critically examine the scope and limitations of free speech in India. Do you think dissent is being increasingly labeled as activism? Write an answer in 250 words, share it in the comment section, and let other students evaluate these answers. And you evaluate each other's answers. Peer review. Let's look at a column, another editorial, injustice in the delay. The announcement of census is welcome, but the delay is unjust. Something that we discussed yesterday. And yesterday I told you that this census exercise, which was primarily meant to be conducted in 2021, but it was delayed because of COVID-19 pandemic. And now it is going to be completed by 2027, next year. And when it is going to be concluded by 2027, the editorial says, why the delay? Because we are in 2025. We can conduct it in 2025 or we can conduct it in 2026. Why do you want to conclude it by 2027? And this is where delimitation becomes important. Because delimitation, which means the increase in the number of seats in Lok Sabha, if at all it takes place, it is going to favor the Hindi speaking states and it is going to disempower, according to this editorial and some politicians from the southern India, particularly Tamil Nadu, it is going to disempower Tamil Nadu and southern states because they have been successful in family planning programs. Because there is a limit now. Delimitation cannot take place unless and until the census figures taken after 2026 are in public. And census after 2026 means 2027, which means if 2027 census is taken, it paves way for delimitation, which means in 2029, we may see an enhanced, a bigger parliament, which now has a bigger seating capacity, a higher seating capacity. Although on delimitation, some experts would say, why do we need more MPs? Because it is no guarantee that an increase in the number of MPs would also mean increase in the quality of debates in the parliament or the quality of bills being passed in the parliament. So do we need a bigger parliament or do we need a united India? But then there are arguments in favor of delimitation, arguments against delimitation, and then you have to provide solutions as well. And this is what this editorial towards the end talks about. And read it with me. The center has yet to clarify its stance on this matter, the delimitation. Although there is a tweet by the Home Ministry which says that delimitation will take care of the concerns of the southern states. With the census now in motion, it is imperative for the center to engage with all stakeholders and build consensus on the sensitive issue of delimitation. Otherwise, the delay in announcement of the census will be taken to mean as an attempt to ensure that ruling BJP benefits from the increased representation of the states in the Hindi heartland because UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, these are the states which will benefit when a delimitation exercise is conducted. Okay? Now let's look at another important column. Should India amend its nuclear energy laws? For that, let's understand this in great detail. There is uranium. It comes in various isotopes. For example, there is uranium 238, there is uranium 235, there is uranium 234 as well. But this naturally occurring uranium that you see, it has 99.3% close to of uranium 238. And this naturally occurring uranium, it will only have up to 0.7% of uranium 235. But it is this uranium 235 which is fissile, which is capable of engaging in a nuclear chain reaction. Then what do we need to do? We need to somehow increase the concentration of this uranium 235. And that is something that we call nuclear enrichment or uranium enrichment. Enrich, enhance through various technologies the concentration of uranium 235 because this is the fissile material which is capable of nuclear chain reaction, the fission reaction. But the point is, if you are increasing the concentration of uranium 235, which is right now 0.7% to 3 to 5%, this can be used for nuclear power reactors. But then, if you enhance the concentration of uranium 235 to greater than 90%, this uranium is known as weapons grade uranium. That means this uranium will then be used for nuclear weapons. India, we in 1974 as well, but then in 1998 as well, 1998, we declared ourselves that we are a nuclear power. We tested a nuclear bomb. And this is where sanctions were imposed. Why? Because United States and other countries, which ironically have nuclear weapons themselves, they don't want proliferation of this nuclear weapon. More and more countries should not be possessing nuclear weapons because they have the monopoly, no one else should have. Otherwise, there will be a danger to the entire mankind or womankind. The point is, sanctions were imposed. Sanctions were imposed on Pakistan as well because then Pakistan also conducted the nuclear tests. So India was in a stage of nuclear apartheid where even if we wanted uranium import for peaceful purpose such as nuclear power reactor, we were not given, we were not allowed for a variety of reasons, and most important reason was United States imposing sanctions on us because we developed and tested a nuclear weapon. We ended this nuclear apartheid when a historic Indo-US nuclear deal was signed between India and United States when George Bush was the president of the United States, Dr. Manmohan Singh was the prime minister. And this ended India's nuclear apartheid. And now we could import uranium for peaceful purposes as well. Technology could be shared with us as well for peaceful purposes. But if there is a nuclear reactor, for example, this is Kundankulam, which is India's biggest nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu, developed with the Russian involvement, the expertise of Russia. This was when Rajiv Gandhi was the prime minister, Mikhail Gorbachev was the head of Soviet Union. This is how the agreement was signed to develop these nuclear power plants in Tamil Nadu. But in case there is a leak in this nuclear power plant, in case there is, for example, the leak that we saw in case of Bhopal gas tragedy in 1984, where methyl isocyanate was released, it is considered to be the worst or the world's worst disaster because there was a leak of this poisonous gas, although not nuclear, but poisonous gas. What if there is a leak in this nuclear power plant? Who has the liability? Liability in the sense, who will provide compensation to the victims? For that, we have a law called Civil Liability for Nuclear Damages Act of 2010. There is also an Atomic Energy Act of 1960. And according to this act, Civil Nuclear Liability Act of 2010, there is a no fault liability. No fault liability regime means if there is a foreign entity which is investing in India by setting up, let's say, a nuclear power plant, and it is operating this nuclear power plant as well. If there is a leak, who has the liability? This operator, even if this leak is not your fault. So, even if there is no fault of this operator, but somehow there has been a leak, Who will have the liability? Who will have to provide compensation? This compensation is to be provided by the operator. In India right now, what is the capacity of our nuclear power generation? We say the capacity is 8 gigawatts, and we want to enhance this to 100 gigawatts by 2047. That is our objective, that we want to become a Viksit Bharat by 2047. So this is what we want to achieve, from 8 to 100 capacity. And for this, there are experts, and the government is also considering that we will amend this civil nuclear liability law. Should we amend it? Should we remove the liability? Yes or no? These are two contrasting viewpoints, and that is how there's a beautiful conversation happening between Mr. Telis and Raghunandan. Mr. Telis agrees that yes, there should be dilution of this law, but Mr. Raghunandan, he disagrees. Why does Mr. Teli agree? He says if there is dilution or amendment of this civil nuclear liability clause, it will attract foreign investment, because there is no proper massive domestic capability that we have to reach this target of 100 gigawatts. For that, we need investment and technology from outside. And why would foreign companies invest in India if the liability is on them? So we have to remove it, we have to amend it, or make it lucrative for these foreign companies to invest in India. And at the same time, they will share their technology. So we need to encourage foreign investment. We need transfer of technology as well. For these two reasons, we should amend this law. But Professor Raghunandan, he disagrees. He says that there are two flawed assumptions that you make while giving these two arguments. Why are these arguments flawed? Reason number one: attracting foreign investment has nothing to do with civilian nuclear liability. It has to do with profitability. If you make this sector profitable for companies, companies will invest. Right now, maybe they see that there is no profit that we can churn from investment. That is why they are reluctant to invest. Otherwise, they would have invested, because these are entities. Private entities, they are solely driven by the motive of profit. They will invest. And second is, you want foreign investment into this sector because you want to enhance the capacity from 8 gigawatts to 100 gigawatts. That means this is massive, from 8 to 100 gigawatts. And you want to do this in a span of 20 years. No nuclear entity, civilian nuclear entity anywhere in the world will have this potential to massively increase the capacity from 8 to 100 gigawatts. This has not happened in United States. This has not happened in France. The only place where it can happen is China. But from China, you cannot invest. So if your argument is that we want to enhance our capacity from 8 to 100 gigawatts in 20 years, for that we need foreign investment, and for that we need to dilute the civil nuclear liability clause, this is a foolish argument. This is based on incorrect assumption. Why? Because such a drastic hike we have never seen anywhere in the world, and no other entity is capable of doing it. Plus, if you dilute this civilian nuclear liability clause, it will give a sense that these foreign entities which are entering India, they are fly by night operators. That they will invest in India, they will set up a factory, but they will have no ownership, they will have no control over any leak, which means there will be suspicion that they will set up a factory or they will set up a plant, a nuclear power plant, but then the onus will be on the host country to ensure its security, to ensure that it is foolproof, to ensure there is no leak. This will then breed suspicion in our minds. Why are they doing this? Why are they not trusting their own capabilities and their potential? something else. Transfer of technology. Argument is that if we will dilute or amend this nuclear liability law, it will attract the transfer of technology to India and it will help us. The counter argument is that for 15 years we have been reducing the FDI barriers in India. In defense sector, for example, we have increased FDI from 25% to 100%. Even then, we haven't seen a significant transfer of technology. What is the technology that we require? Small module reactors. There is a big nuclear power plant, then there is a small module reactor. For that, we need technology. That means this small module reactor can be developed in a factory, assembled there, and then it is portable as well. That means this power plant we can then transfer, relocate to remote areas, to other areas. You don't have to necessarily set up a plant right there. You can build it in a factory and then transport it. For that, in India, we do not have the experience. And it is suspect if foreign companies will share this expertise with us because United States will not allow it. How? This article says that France or Russia or Germany, they have never asked for dilution of this nuclear civil liability. It is only the Americans who want it. And other countries may share their technology with us. But United States will force their private companies not to share this technology with us because then there is a sovereign right of these countries. And at the same time, these small module reactors are developed by private entities. Private entities are driven by profit. If they see profit in sharing this technology, they might give it. Otherwise, no. So it is all based on profit. But if there is United States, and even if there is a private entity, United States will force this private entity not to share this technology, even if there is profit, because United States may not want the sovereign right to dilute. For example, we have seen instances where China, a decision was taken by Westinghouse to transfer certain technology to China. And Westinghouse and US, they are still regretting it. Because what China did, China created a clone of that technology. And that is the allegation against China as well, that for many, many decades, they have hacked through cyber attacks and various attacks. They've stolen all the important and various important sensitive documents related to important emerging technologies. And now it is through a cutting edge research developing some masterpieces in China. Be that as it may, argument number one, we should reduce or amend or dilute the civil nuclear liability. And then the argument against is don't do that because nobody is asking for it except the Americans. And if you do that, it is not going to attract foreign investment. It is not going to attract the transfer of technology. So why do it? Even at the same time, what we need investment in small module reactors. And we are circumspect. We are suspect whether other private entities, unless and until their profit making is taken care of, would be in a position to transfer this technology to us. Clear? Clear? Okay. Now let's look at another important edit column. Is IBC an effective resolution tool? What is this IBC? For example, there is a company, and this company was established in India And over a period of time, this company wants to grow as well. And when you want to grow, this is where you apply for loans as well, you apply for credit as well, whether loans through banks or credit through other institutions or other entities. And now, over a period of time, you are unable to repay. That means this is the promoter of this company. And now, this promoter is a defaulter. In this case, what will happen? If the default is 1 crore rupees, what this creditor has to do, it has to drag this company to NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal, which is a statutory body under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. And right now, we are in the 8th year of this code. Whether this code has worked well or not, that is the crux of this column. And then what this NCLT will do? NCLT will constitute something called Council of Creditors or the Committee of Creditors. And then these creditors are also divided into two broad groups: operational creditor and the financial creditor. Financial creditor, as the name suggests, I have loaned money. I am a creditor, but a financial creditor because money is something that I've given to this company. But there are other creditors who are not giving money directly, but they are giving services. For example, somebody is giving marketing services, digital marketing service, human resources services. So, priority, there is something called waterfall model. Waterfall model in the sense, if this company is unable to repay the debt, which is 1 crore or more, then what these creditors can do, they can drag this company to the National Company Law Tribunal. And then this National Company Law Tribunal will have to set up a committee of creditors. This is where more prominence will be given to financial creditors. Secondary prominence will be given to operational creditors. And then this committee on creditors will also have to appoint an insolvency professional. Although sometimes NCLT will first appoint an insolvency professional and then a committee of creditors will be constituted, which primarily means who will run this organization? This COC, not the founder. Management is suspended. This committee will now run this organization. And then they will decide whether we can run this organization. And we have 330 days to decide, up to 330. How do we want to and whether we can run this organization? And if after 330 days we are unable to decide as to how to run this organization, then this company will go for liquidation. That means now we will have to sell it. What will we sell? Intellectual property of that company, maybe the real estate of that company, or other products of that company. And from this liquidation, whatever money is generated through a waterfall management formula, we will have to give it back to the creditor. That means first waterfall is first right over this money is of the financial creditor, then the operational creditor. Later on, it becomes the right of an employee who has not been given salary or who is owed money by this organization. How is this insolvency and bankruptcy code working? The analysis is provided in this column. The analysis says that banks, they have been in a position to recover a lot of their loans which previously may have become NPAs through this insolvency route. Because when you are owed 1 crore or plus and you are unable to get this money back, then you drag this company to the insolvency proceedings. and then you are able to recover the money. And we have seen 48% of all recoveries made by banks in financial year 23-24 is through this route. Not just that, we have seen that there is a recovery rate of 32.8%. Now, what is this recovery rate? If 100 rupees was owed to a bank, through this process, the banks are able to recover only 32.8 rupees. That this is a loss. Considering that prior to insolvency and bankruptcy code, this recovery rate used to be 20%. So only 20 rupees of 100 rupees you have given as loan to a company, you were able to recover. So the recovery rate is much better now as what it was previously. But even then, there are problems. Most important problem is with the judicial. What is this judicial involvement? For example, you might have read of this case, Bhushan Steel. Bhushan Steel was unable to repay the loan. It went under bankruptcy, insolvency and bankruptcy court, which bankruptcy code, which means a committee of creditors was constituted, insolvency professional, resolution professional was set in place. And now they set a plan in motion because you have 330 days to decide whether we can run this entity or not. They put a plan in motion and ultimately they decided that we have a potential suitor. There is somebody who wants this company to be acquired, and that entity is JSW. JSW then acquired this company in this insolvency process, injected hundreds of crores into this company, and then everything was working fine. And finally, matter went to the court again. The decision given by NCLT can be challenged before NCLAT, National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. And this is where the matter should end. But then the award of this tribunal was challenged in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said the way you have set this ball in motion, the way you have got the acquisition of this Bhushan Steel by JSW, this was flawed. Cabinet Committee on Creditors did not do their job properly. Resolution professional also did not do their job properly. So there was violation of norms, whatever it is. Now we will liquidate. Now imagine a company which was on the brink of bankruptcy. It was saved because JSW started putting money in this and wanted to acquire it. Now, after many years of injecting this money, now the court is saying, no, what you did is wrong. This is not the case. We will have to liquidate Bhushan Steel. What will happen to investor confidence? What will happen to other entities tomorrow who may want to invest in this failing company, want to acquire it so that it can be run? But now it will be hesitant to do so. Why? Because after 3 years, after 4 years, the Supreme Court will say, no, this was wrong. So, does the Supreme Court verdict on Bhushan Steel pose a challenge to the IBC? In one way, yes. But on the other side, no as well. It is not that Supreme Court at their own whims and fancies decided to no, we will liquidate Bhushan Steel. This acquisition of Bhushan Steel by GSW is not correct. It is because rules were violated, norms were violated, systems were violated when this deal between Bhushan Steel and JSW took place. So everybody was at fault. The COC was at fault. The resolution professional was at fault. And Supreme Court has now made it clear that you need to follow norms. And that is what is question on your screen. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code has significantly reformed India's credit culture and debt resolution landscape. But judicial delays and post resolution uncertainties threaten its efficacy. Critically examine the achievements and challenges of the IBC, suggest measures to enhance its effectiveness in the context of India's goal to become a $5 trillion economy. Any questions as of now? Let's look at another column on page number one of today's The Daily Edition. Trump revives controversial travel ban against 12 nations. When Donald Trump campaigned for his election the first time in 2016, when he wanted to become the president of the United States for the first time, he had promised that we will impose ban on Muslims entering the United States. Why? Because according to him, Islam hates United States. Muslims are a danger. We will have to stop them from entering the United States. And within a week, when he became and assumed office of the President of the United States, he imposed a ban on all Muslims coming from 7 countries for 90 days, which included Iran, Libya, Sudan, so on and so forth. But this ban was challenged in the court, and the court said this is unconstitutional. You can't have a blanket ban imposed on one religious community from these 7 countries. It's unconstitutional. Then, after some time, this ban was tweaked. Now, the presidential order said we will ban, but not those with valid green card and not those with valid visas. So, previously, there was a blanket ban on all those, even if you have a green card, even if you have a valid visa, you cannot enter United States for 90 days. When it was overturned by the courts, the second reiteration, the second change took place. We will ban everybody except those with green cards and with visas. Even this was declared unconstitutional. Then there was a third travel ban which was imposed. And this time it was not only the Muslim countries, it was countries such as the North Korea. It was countries such as Venezuela. And this was the time when the court said, yes, this ban is constitutional. Why? Because the president has the power to take some steps on national security concerns. And if there is illegal migration coming into place, it will have a national security concern. On that ground, president has the power. So now when the President Donald Trump has issued another order and has banned people from various countries such as Afghanistan, Myanmar, Congo, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen. You don't have to remember these names, but just understand the concept. Legal experts say that it will stand judicial scrutiny. It may not be declared unconstitutional. Why? Because this is not specific to one religious community. And this is not specific to violation of religion, because this is based on national security concerns, because in the borders of United States, the border that you are facing with the southern border of United States, Mexico, there is an emergency imposed by President Donald Trump. So on that grounds, on the grounds of national security, to tackle illegal immigration, Donald Trump has imposed this ban, which may stand judicial scrutiny, but we will have to wait and watch. Clear? But here, what we need to understand, Pakistan has not been included. Pakistan has not been included, and Pakistan has now suddenly become a chair of a United Nations Security Council Committee on Terrorism. If irony had a face, this was it. Let's look at two quick topics for your prelims examination. Number one, Kaziranga National Park to be expanded to promote tourism. Where is Kaziranga National Park? It is in Assam. What is the highlight of this Kaziranga National Park? Here you will find one horned rhino, and it is argued that of all the one horned rhinos in the world, which can be found in India, the Terai region of Nepal, two-thirds of one horned rhinos anywhere in the world can be found in this Kaziranga National Park. But Kaziranga National Park is not only famous for one horned rhinos, Here you can also find elephants. Here you can also find swamp deers. Here you can also find wild water buffaloes. And what is the IUCN status of one horned rhino? Can anybody tell me in the comment section? Vulnerable. And it is argued that Mary Curzon, the wife of notorious Lord Curzon, was responsible for the partition of Bengal in 1905. She visited this area and she wanted to cite one horned rhino, but she was unable to do that. She was unable to cite any. And then she persuaded her husband so that steps can be taken to protect one horned rhinos. And that is how a forest reserve was established way back in 1908. And then over a period of time, we saw in 1968, this place became a national park. Then in 1985, it was designated as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. And it is not only elephants or wild water buffaloes or one horned rhinos or swamp deers that you find at Kaziranga. There is also a significant population of tigers. And that is why I think since 2006, we now have a tiger reserve at Kaziranga as well. These are the facts. These facts are very important for your prelims examination. How many national parks do you see at Assam, in Assam? For example, if you look at the prelims question this year, there are two national parks in Arunachal Pradesh. That was the statement. In Assam, we have eight national parks. The eighth one is the most recent one, Sikhna, and I don't know how to pronounce this word. I even tried to search it on Google but couldn't find any suitable response. This is the eighth national park in Assam. And who has the power to designate a place as a national park? This power is with the state government. That is how the Assam cabinet, the last year, designated this as the eighth national park in Assam. And although the term or this subject, wildlife, is under concurrent list. Clear? Let's look at the last topic that we have to discuss today. There is something called Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, National Aerospace Laboratories. It is based in Bengaluru. What they have said is they have entered into a historic agreement with a private company. And what is that historic agreement? They want to manufacture and they will manufacture Hansa new generation aircraft. But you need to understand, in fact, this question was asked this prelims examination as well. Not Hansa, other aircraft, whether they are transport aircraft, whether they are fighter jets, bombers, whatever. So you need to understand that this Hansa NG is not a fighter aircraft. It is not a bomber. It will not be used for, let's say, ferrying people. It will not be used for relief and rescue operations. No. Then what it will be used for? Hobby. My hobby is flying. For that, I need an aircraft. Which aircraft I can use for flying purposes in a flying club? Hansa NG. Or I want to learn, practice flying. This is something that I can use it for. So, this is India's first all composite light aircraft. That means material will be used which will not be aluminum or steel. A different mixture of various materials will be used for manufacturing this aircraft. So it is India's first all composite light aircraft And what is it designed for? Training, sport, and flying hobby. These activities. That is where Hansa NG will be used. So you have to be absolutely clear that this is not a transport aircraft. This is not a fighter aircraft. This is not an aircraft for relief and rescue operations. This is for flying, training. This is for hobby activities. And that is it for today in our Hindu newspaper analysis. I'll see you again when I see you. Till then, have a great time. All the best.